What are we? What is reality? The world we see is our true home. However, we're unsure of its nature and don't really understand how it works. But do we really need to know what hides behind it? The answer is yes. And it's human nature to find out. Our senses only allow us to see, hear, and feel the material world. We ourselves are part of it. We know we're made of something that keeps us alive and allows us to experience joy and pain. But our reality is not purely material. There is also a side to reality, though, that we can't see, although we know exists. An internal universe which can remain hidden for an eternity if we don't express it. That's how we love, hate, achieve, think, imagine, learn, design, and invent. In fact, we exist in two parallel realms. A material one where our body roams, survives, is nourished, changes, and finally ceases to be. And a spiritual one with hopes, feelings, memories, science, and questions. Which one is more important? The material world, which keeps us alive but also leads to the death of both realms when the light of physical life is extinguished. Or the spiritual world, delicate but often to be feared. After all, it is here that one person's ambition can lead to the extermination of an entire people. Historically, researchers have focused solely on the material world, quick to write off the soul as nothing more than a byproduct of chemical processes. We are characters in a never-ending book. What is matter made of? The answer is not much. Everything we see is built from a cluster of just 3 types of minuscule particles moving around in empty space. These are electrons, protons, and neutrons. If our eyes were powerful microscopes, we wouldn't see the faces of our loved ones, but simply these particles. Why then is our image of the world so diverse? What we see is a giant meccano made up of different combinations of these 3 particles, giving rise to endless possibilities. Each one has its own properties and the ability to join others to create something greater than itself. By joining electrons, protons, and neutrons, we get different types of atoms or elements, around 100 to be precise. Just think of how different hydrogen is from iron or gold, yet they are all made from the same building blocks. The only thing that sets them apart is how many particles they have and how they're arranged. When atoms come together, millions of extremely different molecules or substances are formed, such as water, sugar, and sulfuric acid, all made using the same ingredients. Mother Nature is like a book written using just 3 letters, where everything we see is a word which gets its meaning from the order of its letters. It is an immense text for an extremely complex world. An infinite and also surprising book where molecules come together to create living cells. Although they use the exact same protons, electrons, and neutrons as iron, their combination gives rise to beings capable of eating, reproducing, defending themselves, and achieving things. Unique combinations which create life itself and the cells that make up the tissue and organs of all living creatures. Creatures which mate, give birth, and are part of families, tribes, societies, and species. All this using nothing but electrons, protons, and neutrons to create a diverse world much greater than its constituent parts. Why are the millions of human beings on Earth all unique? As the material world can only draw on these 3 basic particles, everything we see is the result of an abstract concept: order. The world is in a constant state of change. How these 3 particles are arranged is constantly changing. Each moment is different from the last, The sun rises and sets, winter comes and goes, it rains, the rivers flow, we're born, put on weight, get old, and die. Although the absolute number of protons, electrons and neutrons never changes, the way they come together does. Death pulls them apart and returns them to the universe that gave birth to us. What is behind this never-ending change? What drives this constant transformation where everything is logical and follows a predictable pattern and no living being is identical to another? Science argues that it's down to the laws of physics, which see gravity, electricity and magnetism unfailingly turn chaos into order. But are these the only drivers of change? No, they're simply tools capable of rearranging particles. However, they need something to activate the change. Electricity creates light, but it's us that turn on the switch. Inducers obey laws which are not mathematical in nature. They are logical algorithms governed by creation. From these, everything arises, including life, species, conflict, the instinct to reproduce, individual conscience, and logical and chaotic solutions. But also our soul. The world is based on laws and algorithms which are constantly changing the order of an immense database contained in an infinite book, which also includes the instructions that govern change. In fact, it's more like a piece of software than a work of literature. There is more to reality than meets the eye. The world we see can and does deceive us. It cloaks its atoms made up of infinitesimal particles, dancing around each other in nothingness at great speed, with something they don't intrinsically have: colors, smells, flavors, and something we can touch. How then do we see our partner, smell their perfume, or feel their touch? How can our senses be so powerful that they create a world which is nothing but perceptions? It's not magic. In fact, it happens each and every day. For example, when we watch a football match thousands of miles away on a lifeless screen, it's thanks to software, a mathematical instrument just as powerful as any law of physics. Our perception of reality and everything that causes it to change can be logically explained through the world of computing. If atomic particles themselves were the result of software, then the answer to the question, what are we, would be fairly simple. A disruptive argument. Let's say that creation is the result of a giant piece of software that governs everything, an immense and incredible video game that simulates a seemingly infinite material world, fills it with abstract atomic particles, which it gives a series of numerical properties, and sets them free to join and form multiple elements that obey a set of rules introduced by way of logical algorithms, known as the laws of physics, a world that can be observed and manipulated by its participants. This virtual scenario generates two types of abstract entities with physical properties, which perceive each other as being tangible. Some are not alive, whilst others have features associated with life, as well as a variety of spiritual faculties, conscience, intelligence, memory, a scale of values, the ability to make decisions and freedom. It also creates a third type of entity, perceived as being intangible and stored in databases, which make up Plato's universe. Mathematics, laws, justice, politics, science, etc. As a result of the interaction between properties and the laws of physics, the quadrillion particles, perceived as being tangible, join as part of new computer programs, which give birth to atoms, molecules, gases, liquids, solids, cells, organs, tissues, and living beings. Nature is full of abstract entities which are aware of and interact with one another, as well as react and evolve. They live in a material reality created by computers, one which is very different from their profound reason for existing. The rules programmed to govern existence can be divided into two kinds: physics equations which correct imbalances between numerical variables, and logical algorithms, which govern evolution, species, and individual souls, designed to ensure those who exist behave correctly and interact with one another. These are responsible for the generation of millions of different types of species, environmental hostility, natural selection, the drive to reproduce, the strategy used to distribute resources, aging, and inevitable death, to name but a few examples. Although matter is an abstract entity, it is perceived as being tangible by all the products of creation. That is why we think of it as being so real, as something that can be touched, smelt, heard, tasted, and seen, and as something that obeys the laws of science. This great piece of software gives the living and non-living material world the ability to see and be seen. It designs an incredible environment full of lights, colors, textures, smells, flavors, landscapes, shapes, participants, and ways of being, to give meaning to the epic which represents the ongoing lives of its characters. The great program does not need the imaginary subatomic world of strings, leptons, bosons, and quarks, because electrons, neutrons, and protons, all of which are digital, are created through subroutines, which establish the properties and behaviors observed by quantum researchers. In a nutshell, this proposition argues that all matter, including that which makes us up, is abstract, and if we perceive it as being hard, salty, green, or painful, it is because a computer program causes us to, just as it gives us abstract participants to coexist with, as well as spiritual components. An argument that offers a response to the uncertainties of physics. Although we know the equations for the laws of physics that explain natural phenomena, we don't know what energy, mass, forces acting at a distance, or electromagnetic waves are. Really, they are nothing but abstract variables with properties governed by algorithms, which do not need physical features to be obeyed. This is how they work in our mathematical models. In the great software, space does not exist as such. The position of each particle at any given time is established by a set of coordinates. These constitute a property. Motion is a perception, the result of a mere change in coordinates which obeys the laws of mechanics. Here, distances do not exist. This explains the interweaving and instant nature of gravity and fields. As mass and energy are abstract entities, they can appear instantly when the great program is launched in an apparent Big Bang, without breaking any law, as they are simply numerical boundary conditions. Physics has difficulty explaining why we cannot see forces acting at a distance. According to this argument, these are also abstract entities, only the effects of which we are able to see. The software ensures the laws are respected. Let's say that neurons are part of artificial neural networks. Would it not be logical to think that to do this, they also need to be digital in nature? Each day we simulate physical realities and its fields using computers. When the values produced are the same as those observed, we say they are correct. As such, we reproduce the real world using nothing but software, without needing forces or physical mechanisms to interact with matter. So, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that nature may also function using software? Today, we have televisions that show us fictitious realities. We use personal assistants who quickly become indispensable colleagues. We play using virtual reality. Aircraft fly on their own, and cars are smart. Perhaps we have finally found our true home. An argument which explains the soul. Is it possible I am digital? How can I be free if I am blindly obeying the rules of a computer program? Why can an individual decision destroy thousands of lives? Where does my soul reside? We have never been able to explain its nature or where it is to be found. All we know is that the soul or mind is what allows an abstract entity to come up with ideas, feel, discover, and ask questions. But all that may well be the result of software. The only thing that is needed is a program which creates these characteristics and manages how they influence the rest of creation. Accordingly, the soul is made possible by a program which develops consciousness and generates intelligence to allow us to see, memorize, remember, prioritize, decide and put things in order. It also adds memories and knowledge to an immense database. It has the freedom to make choices based on an ever-changing and chaotic scale of values with random components. And it is capable of changing material entities because they too are abstract and obey the instructions of the software. Where, in what we see as being our material body, would the soul be located? Probably in an abstract cloud, just like our phones, which is able to host our mind. This is something we would access via virtual antennas in our neurons. It would be a place made up of numbers, some of which would define the spiritual software and make up the subtle particles of Epicurus. Today, we are close to programming similar models. Scientists interested in the digital nature of creation will begin carrying out simulations, developing new artificial intelligence, and understanding how the soul, our spiritual self, works. Without realizing it, we have already set out on this path. Every day, we are creating virtual automatons, augmented reality environments and video games, which simulate existence impressively well. We also handle an infinite number of items using abstract language which they blindly obey. And we harness human knowledge in a giant brain that we call the Internet. Smart cars are already able to perceive the real world and make meaningful decisions based on a scale of values. As such, they stop at a red light, take you to your destination, observe the highway code, are aware of other vehicles and avoid crashing into them, and are capable of crashing to save a life. They even talk to the passenger, informing, teaching, entertaining, and telling them off if they misbehave. Self-driving vehicles do not have a conscious self which makes them dream of winning a race. However, we are most likely not that far off. A meaningful argument. Digital humans are a very real possibility. They would certainly be easier to understand and explain than humans made up of a series of atoms, capable of organizing themselves without any other criteria other than abstract, invisible electromagnetism. We shouldn't be disappointed to be the children of a computer program, instead of being manipulated by atomic particles without any intelligence. For all intents and purposes, our true reality is a subjective one we perceive. Our profound nature can be better understood through the lens of abstractness, rather than believing in the miraculous power of electrons and their counterparts. Indeed, these arguments are very convincing. They offer a solution to the inconsistencies of physics and have gained ground with the explosion of the digital world in the 21st century. They also offer a meaningful response to the question, what are we? Matter does not exist. It is merely a perception. Both human beings and the world they live in are abstract entities that are constantly transforming. We are born, we grow, we get old, and we die. But the soul is different. It remains unscathed, amassing memories, experiences, and feelings. It is an unfaltering pure place, and it can therefore be eternal.